TAGNBRAG Nation and Goose Chasers, what is up? Happy Wednesday for all you guys joining us on the launch day of this podcast. Fantastic that you guys are here. Thank you all for listening. Episode number 83. 83 of Goose Chasing. Pretty wild. It's going to be a solo episode with your boy David. And, I don't know. Hold on a sec. I got to boost my mic up in the air a little bit. Let's start this over because I didn't like that at all. And why is this mic not firing itself up? I think I'm going to Boston. I think that I'll retire. I think I gotta do something. Something. All right. Let's do it. TAGNBRAG Nation and Goose Chasers, what is up? Happy Wednesday. It is hump day here in America. So get your humpity hump on. Do your due diligence or whatever you do on Wednesdays and get ready. We are only a couple days closer to the weekend, or we're only a couple days from the weekend. For those of you that live for the weekend, God bless. For those of you that it doesn't matter, God bless. Anyway, we are back with episode number 83, Goose Chasing. Pretty crazy. We are sitting in Camp Cutlet right now, and it is just fantastic to be here. This is the home away from home. This is the sacred grounds. This is it's a lot of things to us. You look around at the walls and there's a lot of memories. There's a lot of times that were enjoyed. There's a lot of tradition. There's a lot of heritage here. There's a lot of roots here, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have this place. I'm grateful to have this as kind of a home base for our hunting world and our hunting activities. And we're bringing you the episode right from the old dining room of Camp Cuddy, which is pretty exciting. Dean and I did a little walking around these parts today. Actually, today we've got about 2 to 3 inches of snow on the ground, which was unexpected, but also kind of expected because it's Western New York. I don't really know what else we were expecting. I mean, it's still March. We're probably going to get another one of these snowfalls well into April. Who knows? We may even get a flurry or two in May. You guys remember, if you follow along, you remember the snowbird from a couple years ago, May 3rd. We had an absolute blizzard roll in during the first week of turkey season here in New York. And Uncle Jay friggin' laid the smackdown on a wet, ugly, snowy blizzard bird up here at camp. Called him in from a far way away, all the way across the ridge top and the ravine. He was sitting in the front field. The sucker came up from behind him, went and knocked over the decoy, and, well, that was his last pounce, if you will. So those of you who say you can't turkey hunt in the snow well, you're wrong. So there's that. But we got a little snow up here today. Yesterday was pretty beautiful. It was picture perfect shed hunting here up in Western New York. Finally, we had a little cloud cover. It was cold, pretty cool actually. So we were kind of bundled up a little bit, but it made walking nice because once you get walking, your body heats up, and, you know, when it's too warm when you're shed hunting, you kind of get uncomfortable. You're dealing with the insects and all that Billy Bob bullshit. But yesterday it was perfect. It was like 40 degrees, pretty cool. And we tied the old Rockies tight, and we set out on a journey. We got permission to shed hunt a couple of the neighboring farms, and one of which we have hunted in the past. Actually, one of which we grew up hunting on. ironically enough, back in the wild, wild west days when really everybody had permission everywhere, kind of. We actually did have permission on this specific piece, but the landowners back then let pretty much everybody hunt this piece. So there was I guess there was some competition, you could say, but back then during bow season, there was not as many people that bow hunted 25 years ago or so. So, and maybe even longer, like closer to 30 years ago. So Uncle Jay and my dad were kind of some of the early adopters, especially in this area, to bow hunt. And usually bow hunting during that time was relatively quiet. We didn't have much competition. There wasn't really anybody else on the land. So we had our certain spots on this specific piece of property, and it was awesome. I mean, I don't know if it was actually awesome, but for me growing up, it was awesome. Like, I can remember going up there, and I remember, like, you walked up this very narrow well road. There's a well way back on the backside of this property, and you walked up this really narrow well road, and the cover on each side of the well road was so thick and so dense, like you couldn't even see through it. So you're walking up there in the dark, and me being a 7, 8, 9-year-old boy in the woods at that point was not like particularly thrilled about walking around in the woods in the dark, especially up this well road, because at least in my thought process, once again, as a young boy, I thought anything could jump out from either side of this path at any point, lay me and my dad out, eat us. It could have been a bear. It could have been a coyote. It could have been a pack of bears for all we know. I don't know. But it's just, you know, you're that young and you're in the dark. It doesn't matter if you're with somebody or not. It's a little unnerving. And for me, it was. But we had this long walk up this well road, and you walked about 100 yards off the road, and then after that, it was a couple hundred yards uphill. It was a long way uphill, and I just always remember walking up this hill in the dark. And my dad was the type of person that it was like, we got to get in when it is pitch black. We got to get in, set up. And meanwhile, there was nothing to set up. It was just get up, get to the stand, and hang your bow up. Knock an arrow and hang your bow up. It wasn't like we were filming at that point and we had anything else to really set up. The setup was easy. Minutes at max minutes. So I remember, like, we'd be creeping up there, and you know, my dad would always be turning around being like, shh, quiet, pick up your feet, pick up your feet, pick up your feet. And it was like I said, it was a couple 100-yard walk up this well road, and it was so dark. The one side was bordered by this dense pine thicket, so it made it seem even darker than it already was. And then we would get up to a certain point, and you get to the hardwoods, and right where the pines ended, we would cut into the hardwoods, and that was our path. And then we had probably another 100 to 150 yard walk through the hardwoods to get us to the stand. And the hardwoods that we were sitting in was on the other side of this dense pine thicket and a field. And it was like, we called it the upper orchard, and because there was some sporadic apple trees up there that always bloomed some apples every single year. So not only was it an awesome, like, travel corridor, but because of the apples being in this spot, the deer would come through there and feed quite often. And for whatever reason, like, when you look at it now on OnX maps, like, it's a little sliver of timber. Like, it doesn't make any sense why this was as good as it was, but I can tell you that at least for up here in Western New York, like, this was the Mecca. Like, this is where you wanted to go, especially the third or fourth week of the season where the deer were starting to chase that rut. It was kind of that end of October, early November time period, because back then, bow season here in New York opened October 15th every year. No matter what day it was, didn't matter. October 15th every year. So the third weekend of the season was like, that was getting into the rut. And then the fourth and fifth weekend, it was on. And by rut, I mean, we're watching, 4 points and little sixers and maybe a basket 8 if we're lucky, chase around doe and, and rut and provide the rutting activity that these whitetails provide. I mean, that was literally it. It was little bucks, but it didn't matter because for me, at least, and for us, the action was so intense. It's what got us hooked. And I can remember a couple hunts up there that were absolutely insane. So to backtrack a little bit, we walked that property yesterday, and man, I'm walking through there, and the hills and the hardwoods are just screaming at me. Different stories and memories and traditions that we had, and just the different hunts and experiences and goose chases that we went on this particular piece of property was insane. It grew us up. It learned us how to hunt. And the one, I'll never forget the one in particular. I went up to this strip of hardwoods that we called the Upper Orchard and yesterday, and I found the exact tree that my dad had a stand in. And for a while, it was literally a ladder stand, probably 8 to 10 feet off the ground. And it was, it was me and him on that ladder stand. And I was small enough to where he would stand on the platform and I would literally sit in between his legs. And the way that he would tell me that a deer was coming or not is he would just tap his toe on my hip. So anytime I felt that toe tap, my heart would just start beating out of my chest. And I'm just slowly turning my head and looking around to figure out where this deer was at. Well, then we upgraded. We got a lock-on stand and we hung it right next to the ladder stand. So at that point, the lock-on stand was like just a little bit higher, and the I would get up and sit on the lock-on stand, and he kind of like bushed it in with like little branches and like pine branches and stuff like that. So it was almost like a little eagle's nest up there around both stands. So I could move around a little bit. I was young at that point. I didn't obviously know all that I do now. I mean, even my dad, like, we're so advanced from a hunting standpoint now. You look back at that and you're like, what on earth were we doing? It was just a lucky tree that we picked out in the middle of this hardwoods. Well, we were up there the one day, and like, when I tell you this place was always action-packed, especially once the rut came around, it was always action-packed. Well, for whatever reason, we were having somewhat of a slow morning this particular morning. We weren't seeing that many deer. It was cold. I remember being like, Dad, I want to get out. Like, let's go to breakfast, this and that. Well, I finally bothered him enough where we were going to get out. And we kind of wrapped up the bow, all of our gear. Meanwhile, like, the safety harnesses back then were literally one loop around the tree, a little strap that connected that loop to another loop that you literally just like kind of connected around your chest. And my dad had, most of the time, like, they didn't even wear safety harnesses, but they put them on us obviously because we were younger. So we get all that wrapped up, and my dad would climb part of the way down the tree, down the ladder, and then I would hand him his bow when he was kind of close to the ground, and then he could handle that, and I would get down after. Well, he's on his way climbing down, and I'm about to hand him his bow, and all of a sudden I look up, and there's deer coming towards us. I'm like, Dad, there's deer coming. So I don't know how, but he got back up into the tree, and these 3 or 4 doe come right down the fence line of the field, and they get 40 yards from us, right on the edge of the field, but like literally straight from our stand to the field through the hardwoods. And they cut this corner, and they come right at the stand, and they literally end up right under us. Okay. And they proceed to walk right past us and into the pines. My dad didn't take a shot, although we were always tempted to fling an arrow back then, no matter what. Like, you saw a deer and it was like, game on. We're hunting. Let's make some cutlets. So, got our hearts thumping. We were like, oh my gosh, so my dad's like, all right, we got, let's give it 10, 15 minutes longer. Sit it out. Like, let's just wait and see if anything else is coming. Maybe these deer are starting to move. So we do. We sit there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. I start getting kind of antsy again, and it's finally time to start wrapping it up. So we wrap it up, go through the same motions again. My dad starts climbing down the ladder. I get on the ladder stand. I'm about to hand him his bow. I look up. All of a sudden, here comes a buck, literally on the same exact path as the doe were. Same path. I'm like, Dad, there's a buck. Well, this buck is nose to the ground. One of those doe had to be hot. He's nose to the ground, and he is literally coming right down their trail. Once again, somehow, I get back onto the lock-on stand. My dad gets up into the ladder stand, knocks an arrow, and this deer at this point is 40 yards from us, right at the edge of the field where the doe were stopped originally before they made their turn to come right at us. Now he must have gotten a scent that he liked, because he kind of gets a little excited and he starts kind of trotting down the path. Literally, he's going to come right under the stand. Well, this is like a little basket 8 point. At that point in our hunting career, like, that was a trophy. Like, anything 6 points or more, man, we're laying that sucker out on the tailgate. We're driving around town, and we're celebrating. Like, excuse me. We are celebrating to the nines. I mean, we're going off. We're getting after it. So naturally, this is a high-intensity situation. We were already out of the stand twice, pretty much. The hunt was over. We were out. And now we got this basket 8 point, and he's coming right to the tree. It's like, it just went from 0 to 100 real quick. Shout out to my boy Drake, an old man. This deer trots right under the stand. And from my perspective, I'm like, he ain't stopping. I don't know why, but I had my dad's grunt in my hand. He always let me hold his grunt, like the grunt tube. It was just to basically pass time and make sure that I sat still or whatever. So I have his grunt tube in my hand. Well, this deer gets to about 20 yards, coming right down the trail, right at us. My dad comes to full draw, and this deer trots literally 8 yards right in front of the tree. Right in front of the tree. And I didn't know any different. I had never experienced anything like this before, but all I knew was the deer was on the move, and he needed to stop in order to get a shot. So, right when he was right under the tree, I gave a good on the grunt call. Literally blew right into the grunt call, super loud, and that 8 point friggin' slammed on the brakes so fast and swung his head up and looked right at us as if he had any other choice or opportunity. It didn't make any sense. My dad's at full draw at this point, and I'm like, sick. Like, we're going to smoke this thing. And he slings an arrow right over this thing's back. And this thing goes taking off right back in the direction that he came from. And I was like, oh my gosh, he was like, oh my gosh, he kind of looked back up at me and was like, what was that? Like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, Dad, I don't know. Like, I thought he had to stop. And I was trying to help the situation at that point. Well, all of that came back to light. And that whole hunt, I can literally replay, like, at least the end of that hunt, I can replay in my mind, literally word for word, still to this day. And so when I was that, I don't know why that's one of the main hunts that comes to mind. And when I was standing up next to the tree that I was in, or that we always used to hang in yesterday, like that hunt was screaming at me. There was also another hunt, just another quick goose chasing story, but it got to the point in the season, I think my dad had tagged a buck already. Uncle Jay was trying, he needed to fill his tag. It was one of the last weekends of archery. It may have been the last weekend. So we go up into the upper orchard, and I'm taking him up there at this point because I'm an upper orchard seasoned veteran. I got like 2 seasons under my belt. I've seen so many deer up there. It's like a deer Jurassic Park to me at this point, but that is my spot. So it doesn't matter where anybody else is going. I'm going there, and whoever else can come with me. Meanwhile, still can't hunt yet. Still can't legally carry a weapon yet. So I go up there with Uncle Jay. I'm like, Uncle Jay, you come with me. This is a sure shot, more or less. Every morning, most evenings, this is a sure shot. Deer are coming through there. If you're shooting spikes, it's game on because this place is a spike paradise. Well, we get up into the stand not long after sunrise. This little forker comes cruising, edge of the pines from the backside of us. And mind you, we never worried about the wind back then, ever. We never worried about the wind. It was just go get in the stands that were good, sit your ass down, and hope something happens. Well, here we go. Forker's coming, and he's going to literally parallel the pines right next to us, but the pines pinch down right next to the stand to where they're only about 20, maybe 25 yards away, and he's on the inside of them pines. So guess what? Little Forker is going to be in bow range. I remember there was a branch off the backside of this tree, and Uncle Jay came to full draw as this deer is coming into a lane at probably 15, 18 yards, and he had to like squat down and duck under this branch to get a shot. Well, he did that. I think he might have had to stop the deer, but he let the arrow go, and that thing absolutely smoked him. And this deer ran just on the same path that he was on, kind of banana curled into the hardwoods, and just crashed, fell over, and started kicking around, thrashing everything. And it was the first deer ever that I didn't even know that could happen with a bow. I thought it was, we were always tracking deer with a bow. That point in my young hunting career, it was like, the track job was part of it. You shot a deer and then we had to go track. That's how we got the name Goose Chasing. Like most of the time, especially with the archery equipment back in the day, it was a goose chase. That's what we were on. That's where my head was at. This deer ran like 60 or 70 yards. Literally, his legs went out from under him mid-run. He skid marked across the friggin' forest floor and just started thrashing around, and he was done in a matter of seconds. D-O-N-E, done. A-B, see you later, Forker. You are going in the skillet. We are having cutlets tonight. Nuts. Couldn't believe it. Like I said, this was the first time that this ever happened to me, that I ever experienced that I ever learned that could even be a thing. So I am super amped up. I'm like, we don't have to track this thing. Like, all we got to do now, we know he's down. Now we just go down and start celebrating. This is awesome. Like, we should try and do this all the time. And it was crazy because as automatic as I knew that spot to be, taking Uncle Jay up there, literally one and done. One and done. Saturday morning, go up there. First deer we saw, lights out, see you later, watch them go down, and we are dragging and calling. I don't even know. We weren't calling anyone because there wasn't cell phones at that point. I don't know if we had radios yet or not, but either way, we were getting a hold of my dad and Dean, and we were celebrating. It was time. My dad had already filled the tag, I'm pretty sure, and Uncle Jay filled his tag. Now the bow tags were filled, and it was just like, bring on the rifle season, boys. So it's just like, it was so cool to be able to walk that piece of property again yesterday, because, man, I haven't been up into that chunk of woods, into the upper orchard, in at least 10 years. At least. Probably more. And then we got to walk some other parts of, well, we really walked this whole, it's like a 250 acre chunk. And we walked a majority of it yesterday, and it was just the whole time. Like, I remember back in the day being able to do man drives back on this property, and there's all these, smaller chunks of timber and chunks of thicket and areas that, like, we would just section off and set up guys and push it and bust deer out. And we shot a lot of deer back on this property. It's deep into the heart of the creek bottom, and it's just so diverse. It gets really super dramatic with the hills back there. You go from open hardwoods to like a steep ravine and then a dense pine bottom, like that. It's nuts. And I, so many stories from back there, so many goose chases. It was just wild for me to go back. I mean, on some of these pieces, I'm telling you guys, it's been 20 plus years since I've seen these woods. And it's not that far from us, where our property is, where we have the ability to hunt. But it's just that this property is kind of closed off to hunters at this point. We got permission to shed hunt it, which was awesome. And we respect that they don't want hunters in there now. It actually works out pretty solid for us, because it butts up right next to our property, and there's not a whole lot of activity in and out of there throughout the hunting season. But man, that used to be it for us. Like, and especially during rifle season, that was the spot where, it provided so much dense cover and so many little pockets that we could go push to bump deer out of. And when we had 10 plus guys hunting with us, that's what we did. And so it provided a lot of memories. It provided a lot of entertaining hunts. It provided a lot of cutlets. I won't lie. And it was crazy to walk it. As we were walking, and I'm literally deep down in that creek bottom, I find this. For all of you guys that are on YouTube, you can see what I'm holding up in front of the screen right now. This beautiful half of a mainframe 12-point. It's a 6-point side, the biggest shed that I've found in New York to date yet. And I'm walking down in the creek bottom. I get down in there, and I'm honestly, I took my guard off of even shed hunting at this point. I was just enjoying the time. I was just enjoying the nostalgia, enjoying like the memories. And I would come up over a hill and be like, oh my God, I remember when Uncle Jay and I were sitting here, and man, 2 bucks came in, and I saw a big one, and he saw the wrong one, and he shot the smaller of the 2, and nobody believed me when I saw the bigger one. But the tracks in the snow kind of confirmed what I saw and what he shot. And it just, there's so many different memories that are just screaming at me walking down through this just beautiful, picturesque creek bottom, that it was hard to concentrate on finding sheds, honestly. It was more of just soaking up like the roots and the past, and like digging deeper into that. And I just, man, it was awesome. So anyway, I'm down in this creek bottom, and I'm trying to figure out, do I cross the creek or do I just stay on this side and kind of cover this side? And it's not really in a very good spot to find sheds, if that makes sense. Like, the deer aren't going to really lay down here. They're kind of going to be more just traveling through. It's a good spot for thermal cover in the wintertime, but there's no food down there. Like, they're not destining down there to go eat or anything like that. So I kind of took my blinders off of even finding any sheds at that point, and I walk up on this skull, and we had found our walks up here, and we knew it was going to happen, but we've so far between Dean and I, we've found 10 different fawns that are dead from this past the harsh winter that we had this past year, which is super unfortunate, but it must just be Mother Nature kind of resetting herself. But I'm down in this bottom, and I walk up on this skull, and the skull, like when I walked up on it, I'm like, man, that's a big deer. Like that's from a big deer. And I'm like looking at it, I flip it over, and it's got 2 pedicle marks on it where it looked like, it was a pretty sizable buck. And you could tell just by the bone structure of this thing that it was a bigger head. It was a bigger deer. And I'm like, man, that's a bummer. Like, deer had to have died last year. The weird part was, like, one of the pedicles looked like it had been dropped like weeks or even months prior to the other one. Like, the one was almost smooth, and the other one had looked like, it basically just shed before it had died. Well, I turn around, and there's kind of like, you could kind of see some bones in the leaves and stuff like that from his like the carcass and stuff. And man, I take like 2 steps, and I literally almost step on this 6-point side. Literally almost step on it. I look down, I'm like, oh my gosh, holy smokes, that is insane. Like, I literally almost walked right by it. And so I pick it up, I'm freaking out. Naturally, I'm just like, I'm so jacked up. I'm over 4 miles into a walk. Dean and I haven't even found anything. I don't even know where Dean's at this point. I'm in the middle of this Creek Bottom Deluxe that I don't even, like, a part of me doesn't even know where I'm in other than where I'm at, other than just being on OnX. And yeah, so I'm like freaking out. And all the while I'm thinking, I'm like, man, was this the deer that died? The backside of this shed kind of looks dirty, like it's been there for a while. Like it's almost like last year, but there's not really many chew marks on it. A couple on the 1G3. But it's still holding its color. I'm like, did this thing just get preserved? All the while, I'm like, we don't have a mainframe 12 on camera from this past year. Like, we run a lot of cameras up here. And I know deer can easily skirt them and stuff like that, but you would think if a deer's living in these parts, like at some point, we're going to get a photo of them. Then it dawned on me, and I'm like, we have like 2 or 3 photos of a mainframe 12-point right before the season started, fall of 2023. So it was 2 years ago hunting, not last year's hunting season, but the year before hunting season. And we had this buck on camera twice, right after he shed velvet. I think it was in September, mid-September maybe. And then we never saw him again. And one of our neighbors who hunts on the backside of our block said he was getting pictures of him too, I think into October. And then he never saw him again. And I'm like looking at the rack, and I'm looking at the head of this thing, and I'm like, man, is this the dead deer? Is this him? Did he die? And Dean and I kind of came up with the conclusion that he did. Like, it'd be tough to understand or comprehend how we wouldn't have seen this deer this past year if he was still in there. And noticeably, you would notice him for sure being a mainframe 12-point. The skull that I found 10 feet away from this thing was a bigger skull. The side of the skull that had the pedicle that looked fresher was the same side from this shed. The other side looked like it was kind of like real worn down, and almost like that side of his rack had fallen, maybe days or weeks prior. So it got me to thinking, I'm like, maybe this deer got hit. Maybe somebody shot him in early bow season, and he struggled for a while. He lost his one side, and then he came down here, and as he was dying, essentially, he lost his other side. And the antler kind of got preserved because the deer was dead right there, and then the snow came and everything got a little buried, and it just got preserved from this year to last year. That's the only thing that I can really think of that makes sense, since we didn't see the deer this year. Some of our neighbors that were seeing them also never saw them this year. But I mean, for Western New York, you just don't find sheds like this very often. It's hard to find sheds, period, in these big hardwoods and the hardwoods bottoms and the beaver swamps and all that. There's just so much cover and so many places that they can go, and so many like what am I trying to say? Like unpatternable trails or travel routes that they can take, and the winters are always different, so it's unpredictable at where they're at and when they're actually shedding. You know, some of these deer could be miles away at times when they're shedding, because they do to some degree migrate or move around up here, especially to get relief from the depths of winter and the depths of snow. So man, it was just so cool. You know, 4+ miles into our walk, I stumbled upon this thing. It was the only shed that we found yesterday. It was such a cool afternoon being out there and, you know, in the nostalgia and just soaking that part of it in. We will have that vlog on our YouTube channel, if it's not already when you guys are listening to this, so that you can kind of experience that with us, because it was super cool. Like, just going through the memory bank, and it was crazy how vivid the memories came back for me. It was crazy how like intense they were. And I don't know. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for, you know, for days like yesterday where you can go back through that. I'm grateful for all the times and all the memories that I had to be able to experience something like yesterday, and going through, you know, that tradition and that memory bank, and just kind of being able to reflect and rejuvenate and just, you know, use it as inspiration and motivation to, you know, for this year and for the upcoming years to keep going up here and just keep expanding on what we have. It was so cool. And to be able to find this shed in the process, I mean, what more could you ask for? You know, it was a long day of walking, a lot of hours, a lot of miles in, and to only find one shed, it was like, you know, a lot of people would look at that as a failure, a failed day or whatever in the woods, but it was everything but that for me. And I'm super grateful for growing up in a family of hunters. I'm grateful for my dad and my uncle for taking us at a very young age and allowing us those experiences and those memories, because it's molded me. It's helped me shape my life. It's given me something to chase. It's given me a passion to connect my life to, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. It's super cool, and just, yeah, super blessed for that opportunity. Like I said, we will have that vlog will be on our channel here soon. We've got some other New York shed hunting that we'll be showing you guys, and just kind of the aftermath of this harsh winter up here that we can kind of go through and talk through before we get into some land management and food plot chronicles here in the next couple of months, and turkey season, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of all I got for you guys today. It's a little shorty episode, but wanted to connect and give y'all something. We appreciate you guys listening in and week out. Shout out to the guys at Painted Arrow and the podcast that we did last week. If you haven't listened to that one, I would highly recommend going back into the archives just a week and going to listen to that one. It's a longer podcast. We were sitting in our Airbnb in Columbus at the open season sportsman show in Columbus, Ohio, and got to sit down with those guys who are our new partners and talk with them about hunting, kind of some of their experiences growing up, some of my experiences growing up, where we're at now, you know, the kind of the state of the hunting industry as we see it, what we value, and what we're chasing in this space as kind of the next generation and next wave of hunters coming coming up to try and keep this tradition alive for the generations that are after us. So if you haven't already, I would highly recommend going to watch that. And once again, we appreciate you guys following along week in and week out. If you don't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on Spotify or anywhere that you take in your podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. And we will see you right back here next Wednesday. I think we're going to be having a special guest on next Wednesday. So y'all have to wait and see who that is. But we'll see you right back here next Wednesday on Goose Chasing. Goose Chasing. Goose Chasing. Goose Chasing. I love y'all, and I appreciate every one of you that consistently comes and takes in our content and comes along this journey. God bless.